welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host, Justin Baker, is joining me via Skype, and we are jumping right in. This is the fourth day in a row that we're doing a show, and today is on the top 15 goaltenders that are still in the playoffs for all playoff teams. So we've already done centers, wingers, and defensemen, so let's finish it off, cap it off with goaltenders. We decided to go top 15. I think Justin still, he might rattle off his rest of his top 20, but we just felt like top 15 was good since most teams only have one good goalie. Although I guess there's a couple teams on my top 15 with two goalies, but just to keep it, I don't know, because otherwise we might as well just do a top 24 and have all the goalies in there. So we stuck with the top 15. With that said, Justin, you want to just give us your 20 through 16?
Yeah, why not? When I was putting together this list, when you talk about most teams with good goalies, right? Like one team you look at is the Dallas Stars. They've got Ben Bishop and Khudobin back there that both had solid seasons and could both be potential starters in the playoffs. But unfortunately, that carried some weight into my decision, was who's going to be the guy I think that the team's going to go with, and what important numbers, what stats, what kind of performance this guy's going to give his team. And I think that weighed a big number into it. And so rattling off my 20 through 15. So I've got at 20, Braden Holtby, 19, Matt Murray, 18, Peter Mrazek, 17, Varlamov, and 16, Corey Crawford.
Okay. All right. I like the list. It's. I feel like that's Colorado's one thing is their goaltending. They fall out of this list. Say your four again one more time.
Oh yeah. So
I just want to compare them where they're on my list.
Yep, I got Holtby at 20, 19 Matt Murray, 18 Peter Mrazek, 17 from the Islanders Varlamov, and 16 from the Blackhawks Corey Crawford.
Okay, all right. So I only have one of those players made my top 15.
All right,
yes, only one, and that is Braden Holtby. Is the only one that made my top 15.
Yeah, I was hesitant. I wanted to put him a little bit higher, but given his poor performance during the regular season and the fact that he could be, he could be the one out after the season, so maybe they roll with Samsonov in the playoffs, kind of led me lean towards putting him a little bit lower than maybe a lot of people do have him on this list.
Yeah, I did see a rumor that it's possible he'll sign a 1-year deal to stay in Washington.
Well, all right.
So that's out there. Who knows, who knows the validity of that, but I did see that. I guess it's a possibility. I will talk a little bit more about him when we get to where I dropped him and why I put him there. So with that said, I'll just give you my 15 through 13, and then we can kind of dive into where you put guys, and we'll go from there. My 15, I have a guy who, Sergei Bobrovsky's my 15 from the Florida Panthers, and I think it's almost amazing that he's had such a fall from grace so quickly from his pretty solid playoff year last year. Certainly wasn't his fault that he loses in the second round to the Boston Bruins, and he has that great first series against the Tampa Bay Lightning as a Blue Jacket. But in Florida, he has easily his worst year of his career. Who would have thought signing a $10 million deal and you'd fall into the toilet? Bobrovsky, just an absolutely terrible year, but I do think that this is an opportunity for him to redeem himself, and maybe this is a true second season for Bobrovsky. And really, if we see the Bobrovsky we saw last year's playoffs, the Panthers could very well go into these preliminary round, beat the Islanders, and then have a great shot at whoever they play next. Like, imagine if the Panthers were to play the Bruins in technically round one, where Bobrovsky gets a second crack at the Bruins for the second year in a row. It'd be pretty interesting. But he's my 15. Then I've got Carter Hart at 14 for the Flyers, and Dallas's backup goaltender, Anton Khudobin, at 13.
All right. I can honestly say that Khudobin did not make my list, although his numbers would definitely validate, the need to put him on most lists. I think, he had a great regular season, and he's a great 1-2 punch for Dallas, but did not make my list just because I know for certain he is definitely not starting.
Yeah, he's not going to start, but nevertheless, he is still, on probably half the teams that made the playoffs, he probably would become the starter. So right. I'm not going to knock him for having a guy who was a Vezina candidate last year slightly ahead of him. And he also he does play on a very defensive team, so that certainly boosts his stats a little bit. But Dallas is in a great position if something happens to Bishop, which we've known that has happened before. He's gotten hurt in the playoffs a couple times, especially when he was with the Tampa Bay Lightning. And that was really where Andrei Vasilevsky got his first opportunity, was because of a Bishop injury. So who knows? Maybe Qdoman gets another opportunity if Bishop can't go.
Yeah, and you look at the advanced statistics, goals saved above average. You rank third in the NHL, behind two guys that are up for the Vezina right now, Connor Hellebuyck and Tuukka Rask.
Yeah, and to he's only played 30 games.
Yeah.
And he goals saved above average is like, hey, here's the amount of games you played and here's how many extra, goals you saved. So the more games you play, as long as you play good, as long as you've played well, seemingly those numbers would be higher, which, hey, Connor Hellebuyck played almost double the amount of games that Qdoman played and saved less than 5 extra goals over the course of those 28 games. Just shows you how good Qdoman really was.
Right.
So who are your 15 through 13?
Yeah, so at 15, I've got Elvis Merlikins. He's a goaltender I really want to put higher on this list, but, again, I'm torn. I don't know if he's going to be the starter, if they're going to go to Korpisalo. Honestly, if you look at his numbers, though, he definitely you can't argue if they decide to make him the starter, right? If you look at goaltenders that basically played, more than 10 games in the regular season, he ended up with the 8th best save percentage in the NHL.
And he had he finished out what was left of the regular season. He was pretty good.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Finished it strong. Obviously he came out and it was a little rocky to start, and you start to wonder, hey, is this guy really the real deal, right? Is he what, everybody was making all this big hype about? And then, of course, just bounces quickly back and, gets an opportunity and really ran with it. And so it'll be interesting to see what Columbus, decides in terms of who they start here to open up, their series. But either way, I got to say it's not a bad choice, either guy you pick. And so for me, he comes in at 15 just because, again, I can't decide who's going to start in net for that team. And then moving on to 14, I've got Sergei Bobrovsky. And, you kind of talked about it. And, we saw that exhibition game against the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I don't really actually, even though it looked like a shellacking 5-0, he really, I don't really think he was at fault on many of those goals. And, although he really didn't look that well, I still would like to and expect to see a better Sergei Bobrovsky in the playoffs, and hopefully he can get somewhere close to where he was last year. And I think Coach Q can, maybe take a minute here and pause and hit the reset button for him, and they can.
Guy needs so many damn reset buttons.
I know. At some point, you just got to say your 3 lives are over.
The good news for Bobrovsky is that he won't have to go up against the same firepower playing against the New York Islanders. So he at least has that going for him. Did you see the Florida Panthers tweet about that game where they copied and pasted Tampa Bay's tweet after losing in 4 games to Columbus, where it was like, we don't know where to go from here. We're disappointed too. We can't begin to figure out what happened, and all this. And it was just we're just glad that you're here and that you're with us or something. And so Florida just tweeted that exact same thing after losing that game. Of course, in full jest, who cares? It's an exhibition game. No one gives a crap.
Right.
But
that's interesting.
I thought that was whoever the Florida Panthers Twitter guy is, solid move.
Yeah. Yeah. Can't argue with that one. I love it. And then, of course, for me at number 13, I've got Jacob Markstrom for the Vancouver Canucks. I think, this guy here, he obviously has an opportunity now. He looks like he solidified his position over the last couple of years as Vancouver's go-to guy. And, 918 save percentage through 43 games, obviously got a little hurt there towards the end. And so luckily we had this pause so he gets an opportunity to heal up, come in fresh. And I really think he's poised to do some damage with a young, fast, capable team in front of them that really has some firepower. And so hopefully we'll see a much better and non-injured Jacob Markstrom.
Yeah. I think that he was slightly above average, which I think is like what we kind of expected from him. I mean, I guess he was 11th in goals saved above average. You know, he wasn't, in terms of like goals against, he wasn't necessarily great. He was in the early 30s. Save percentage wise, he's 20th or tied for 19th, but he was good enough. I feel like he was solid. There wasn't any reason to go, oh crap, we have Jacob Markstrom back there. He was an average goaltender, and that frankly is, you're in pretty good shape if you're an average goaltender in the NHL. You have every opportunity to win every game if you're average, slightly above average on any given night.
Yeah, and you know what? It's funny because most people look at him and say average, right? But you look at a guy, obviously a lot younger at 21 years old, but a Carter Hart who played the same amount of games, only managed one more win, and had a worse save percentage at .914 compared to Markstrom's .918, and yet everybody's praising Carter Hart as like the savior and goal for the Philadelphia Flyers. But Markstrom doesn't get that same respect, and maybe it is because I think he maybe had high expectations and really didn't deliver early on in his career, and has sort of taken a little bit longer to come to form. But I think he's here, he's ready to play, and I think he'll be a solid goaltender for the Vancouver.
Yeah, you're right. They both have very similar seasons. Like when you look at their win-loss record, you look at their quality starts and everything. They both had 25 quality starts. They both played very well. And they're just at different points in their career, right? A 21-year-old and a 30-year-old. By the time you're 30, we now know what to expect. Like, this is probably as good as it gets for Jacob Markstrom, in my mind. Like, this is the goalie that I think Florida expected when they drafted him, and Vancouver expected when they traded for him. And whereas Carter Hart, you're looking at him right now going, he's only 21 years old, and he's putting up pretty darn good numbers. What's going to happen when he's 24, 25, and he's in the prime of his career? You're hoping for Carey Price kind of numbers at that point. So I think that would be the difference. Speaking of Jacob Markstrom, he is my number 12. So I think we've covered him at length enough. I have him just a little bit higher. Probably I have Anton Khudobin on my list, so he jumps Anton Khudobin because he's going to start for his team, and then of course he's ahead of Carter Hart. He had a little bit better of a season, and Bobrovsky, because Bobrovsky's only on the list because I feel bad not having him on there. And same kind of goes for my number 11 pick. That's Braden Holtby. Didn't have a great regular season, but that has happened before, where there was controversy about him and net, and we weren't sure who was going to start. And that year he didn't start, but then after game 2, he hopped in, and Washington just went on to win the Stanley Cup. So the difference between Holtby and Bobrovsky, Holtby has done it multiple times. He's won numerous series, and he's won a Stanley Cup. Bobrovsky has won one series. Did he win any when he was in Philadelphia? Not as the starter, I don't think, right?
I don't believe so either. No,
I think he was. Right. He was there when like Michael Leighton was there, and I think he was there when they went to the finals. He just wasn't starting. But anyways, we can look that up. But that's why Holtby's ahead of him there, because I just feel like Holtby's done it before, and I'm willing to put him a little higher on this list, knowing he's got the experience, and I expect that for these 30-ish games, 20, 30 games. Potentially for Washington, that he's pretty good. And then coming in, my first in the top 10 is Marc-Andre Fleury for the Vegas Golden Knights.
Okay.
Who I don't know. I think he's going to start. That would be my guess, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's funny. The Las Vegas Tribune, I'm not sure what their paper is called out there, but they actually wrote 2 separate articles. One on why Marc-Andre should start, and one on why Robin Lehner should start.
Oh, that's interesting.
Both, very good reads, and I'm surprised it wasn't one article, but it was interesting to hear an argument for both guys, and so I definitely have my opinions, and we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, so, they'll be playing in about 5 hours from now, so we'll find. And I'm pretty sure Marc-Andre Fleury is going to start that game, but
yeah, beautiful.
Okay, yeah, let's go year 12 through 10.
Yeah, 12 for me is Marc-Andre Fleury. Again, could be, higher, but again, I don't know if he's going to be the guy in that, yet for this team. And not only that, too, but you look at his numbers this season, and obviously he's had a down year. Ever since coming to Vegas, he started out with a .927 save percentage, and it's been going downhill, every year ever since. And is that due to age? Is that due to the team in front of him? And I'm not really sure. I personally think this team this year is much better, suited and better coached than they were maybe last year. So, be definitely
Good
interesting.
Lord, it's pretty quick how we go from frickin' Gerard Gallant being the greatest coach in the NHL to last year he wasn't that good.
I mean, he was fine. He was average, He
was fine.
I have no problem.
He
was fine.
He's a very, very good coach, I'll say. I'll say he's much more than fine. He's in the top 10 of coaches.
Yeah, I won't argue with that. Absolutely not. And I'll be interested to see where he lands.
Babcock ended up in Vermont, eh?
Vermont.
Do you see that? He's took a volunteer coaching, consulting job with the University of Vermont. So he's really trying hard to get out of Dodge. He doesn't want to be anywhere that people can recognize him, apparently.
Well, he definitely doesn't need the paycheck. That is for sure.
That is true.
Yeah, so for me, I just, again, we mentioned it, just, is he going to start? Is he not? So he's at number 12 for me. But again, this guy's got the experience, the pedigree. He's been there to the Stanley Cup so many times, both as the guy and, as the backup, as we've seen.
Did you know? Can I just throw this out? Did you know?
Please.
So the last 2 years, 18-19 and 17-18, Fleury was fourth in Vezina Trophy voting last year and fifth the year before that. And he has, it's only 2011-12 and 2010-11, he was 7 and 8 overall for the Vezina. So he's never been in the top three, only twice in the top five, and it's been with Vegas both times. He had a season in 14-15, he was 34-20-9, a 9.2 save percentage, 2.32 goals against, and 10 shutouts. And yet, no, he wasn't even in the top 15 for Vezina voting.
Wow.
But he was 18th in Hart Trophy voting.
Yeah, I think, it's
people
kind of like a double-edged sword. I don't know if it's people hate him, but I think it's like when you play in front of Crosby and Malkin, it's like they expect you to get the W's. They expect you to have shutouts, right? So maybe you don't get as much love as you necessarily should.
Justin, Andrew Hammond had a vote, and he didn't. Cam Talbot that year had a vote, and he didn't.
I can't right now. We're moving on. That's embarrassing.
It was the year that Andrew Hammond was 21-2.
With Ottawa,
9.41 save percentage. Yeah.
That was unreal. Okay. Well, moving on. Number 11 for me, I've got Carter Hart. I think this guy's poised to, have a great playoff run, hopefully, for the Philadelphia Flyers. I would love to see them go deep, and they're a team that basically a lot of people are expecting to kind of be that, I don't want to say underdog, but a team maybe that nobody really is expecting to go deep, and they could make some noise in the playoffs, and I think he'll be a big reason why. I think, he's only getting better, as he's getting older here, 2 years already in the National Hockey League, and both years some good numbers here, so excited to see what he can do in the playoffs finally. And
they're definitely the team in the East that we're not used to seeing being a top seed, right? Like we're used to them. Okay, they're a wild card, and they come in and they lose in 5 or 6 games to whether it be Washington or Pittsburgh or whomever up at the top, and they're disposed of pretty quickly. But it'll be interesting to see what they can do, because they're really at the point where a lot of their young guys who have been touted for a really long time are finally kind of starting to mature and are in this position where they actually have a pretty good mix of veterans and younger players. They by far aren't the youngest team anymore, so it's kind of about time for this team.
Right, yeah.
Other than Carter Hart being very young.
Right, you talk about young guys like Travis Konechny and Provorov, right, ready to make a name for themselves in the playoffs. So I'm really pulling for them to, come out of that preliminary round and get to face the Pittsburgh Penguins in the second round is what I'm really hoping for. A 4 or 5 matchup with the Penguins and Flyers would just be my dream. And that would really be a good test for a guy like Carter Hart to start his playoff career. And then moving on to number 10 for me is a guy who maybe, didn't have as great a numbers as maybe should have in the regular season. I think his team is, forechecks hard, plays fast, and maybe that might translate into some success in these playoffs because he's definitely going to have to be good for them to advance, and that's Carey Price.
Okay. All right. You've got Carey Price a tidge bit lower than where I have him, but I was going to ask, Nolan Patrick, have we heard anything about him? He's not going to play, is he?
No, from what I understand, he's still experiencing some migraines, and so they're holding him out.
I always feel bad when people have that crap going on.
Yeah, that's so, and it's like it's not even has anything to do with that injury history that he had coming out of the draft and why he was held out for.
Sure.
It's just it sucks for them, and they're they could really use him to be that third line center. Luckily, they've got Kevin Hayes who looks like a quality piece, but it would just be
he better be a freaking quality piece. 7.142857, I think is what.
Yeah, that's another conversation for another time.
Yeah. Okay, so Carey Price being at 10, why so low?
Well, to be quite honest, I mean, yes, if I had maybe to rely on one goalie for one game, he would be a guy that I might look to. But, over the course of the season and the team in front of him, what maybe, in terms of when you look at that defense outside of, a guy like, Jeff Petrie and Shea Weber, there's not much to really rely on, not much to get excited about. And same goes with the offense. They've got a couple good pieces up front.
But they're going to get trucked. There's no doubt about that.
He has to be the guy. And again, I've kind of looked at his numbers a little bit more over the last couple of years, and they're just not that Carey Price-esque numbers that I've come to expect, I guess. And that contract doesn't help it either, and kind of magnifies it even more. But it's just been a little disappointing for me, and so I just can't justify putting him higher, I guess.
Yeah, when I look at Carey Price, I see a guy who, if you took him and you put him on any of these, like, let's say top 6 teams in the conference on either side, he's probably up for a Vezina. But Montreal is not good. Like, Montreal is, I'd say, like, I look at Montreal and then I look at, let's compare them to, say, Detroit. Like, what do they have that Detroit doesn't have? They have Shea Weber. And
Carey Price.
Yeah, they have Carey Price. I mean, there's comparable pieces all along the way. I mean, yeah, sure. Montreal has Max Domi. Well, the Red Wings have Dylan Larkin, who's proven to be a solid number one, at least a number 2 center, and that's about what Max Domi is, one of those in-betweener kind of guys. And I mean, I looked their lineup top to bottom. They're not that different, yet Montreal is way up here in the playoffs. I mean, granted, they're the 12 seed, but they're in the playoffs, and Detroit finishes last. And why? You're right. It's Carey Price. And so when I look at his numbers, yeah, all right, he's a goal and a little bit under the average of goals saved, but I consider the team in front of him, and I go, I mean, the only reason this team is here is because of him. So for that reason, he's higher on my list, and then we'll find out where. I guess I'll jump into my top 9 here. We'll go Frederik Andersen at number 9, the Leafs goaltender, and which, surprisingly enough, NHL.com in their list did not have Frederik Andersen anywhere in their top 10. I thought that was a little surprising.
Wow.
So he's my number 9. Robin Lehner is my number 8. I actually have him ranked higher than Marc-Andre Fleury, even though I know he's not going to start. I think he's the better goaltender right now. And if I were the Vegas Golden Knights, I would start Robin Lehner. But yeah, I know familiarity is certainly a factor. But anyways, I have him at 8. And then at number 7, I have Arizona's goaltender, Darcy Kuemper.
All right. I love it. Can't really argue with any of those picks because when you hear mine, you'll hear some similarities, some names in there. So, yeah. So at number 9 for me, I've got Darcy Kuemper. I really like this guy. I think he's going to be the go-to guy for Arizona over Antti Raanta, and his numbers prove why he should be. I mean, this guy, 928. Yeah, and a 16.65 goal saved above average for a team that doesn't score much. And, hopefully he'll get some offensive support now, maybe this postseason, now that they've had some time to maybe, like with training camp and maybe Taylor Hall a couple minutes to reset. Even though, to be quite honest, Taylor Hall really wasn't that bad for this team. He still was close to a point per game. And again, Phil Kessel, they've got some offensive studs there that could, score a few goals. So if they do, and, his ability to shut down the net and really keep, teams in front of them to low scoring games, they could have an opportunity to make a little noise, early on. And then moving down my list at number 8, I've got Igor Shesterkin. I love this guy. I think he's going to be a superstar in this league. There's no reason why he wasn't plucked earlier to be the starter for this team. I know there's still some controversy, and maybe Hank is the guy if you're looking for somebody with experience, but I look at what Igor did in the Russian league, and granted, yes, it is different than the NHL, and you have a lot of different players at higher skill levels here, but he ate up the KHL and only comes over here, and at 24 he's poised to be a Vezina goalie here soon enough. So is it time to give him the reins? I think they probably won't. I think, again, they'll go to the King maybe, but I still think he's the better goaltender right now at this point in Hank's career.
Wow, you've got him so much. He's at 7?
Yep. He's at number 8. I'm sorry.
Number 8. So you have Anderson at 7 then?
No, and at 7, I've got Robin Lehner, actually.
Okay, Robin Lehner.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I mean, it's surprising to me that you've got a guy with hardly any NHL experience, and you've got Carey Price behind him. I don't know, it's just interesting to note.
If anything, that just tells you how high I am on this guy. I think he's going to be a stud, and I think he's already shown, just in the few games, he's played, how good of a goaltender he is. I mean, in 12 games, his goal saved above average was a 9.3 with a 750 quality start percentage. I mean, he's just went 10-2. I mean, it was all beautiful for him. So if he can get a little bit of goal support from Zibanejad and Panarin up front, it should be pretty interesting. And I think the Rangers would have a good opportunity to come out. But again, it all depends on, are they going to start Shesterkin or go to the King?
Yeah, that will be. I mean, oh man, can you not start Henrik Lundqvist?
I think you have to, but this is probably out of all the who's going to start goaltender tandems, I think this is probably the shortest leash.
He really wasn't. He really wasn't that great. Like, I mean, none of the Rangers goalies made my list just because of the lack of experience. I mean, truly, I know he did play well in the Russian league. He did have a good 12 games in the NHL, but it's 12 games. We have seen guys have good starts to their career. They start to get figured out, especially in a playoff where, hey, those 12 games, if they think there's any chance of him starting, they're definitely honing in on some of his weaknesses. They're watching film. That can sometimes change the effectiveness of a goalie. A new goalie, nobody knows much about him, and that's definitely to his advantage early on. So I don't have him on my list, but Rangers, I think the ballsy move would be to go with him. Like, do you want to win, or are you just happy that you made the playoffs and you're willing to sacrifice all that on the altar that is Lundqvist? Because he hasn't been good in a couple of years.
No, but yeah, I have no idea what they're going to do, to be quite honest. It's going to be interesting. I would probably, if it was me, I would say just be ballsy about it and go with Shesterkin. Lundqvist knows, he's on his way out. He knows there's 2 other good quality goaltenders. I mean, we forget about Georgiev, and he's still, granted, he's nowhere near, I think, the quality goaltender that Henrik was at his prime or that Shesterkin can be, but I still think he is a good quality goaltender.
Sure.
So, again, he probably is well aware of the situation, and so yeah. I don't think it would be, any hard feelings if they went with Shesterkin.
Which in the exhibition game, they split time. They both played about 20-something minutes apiece, 29
and they
minutes
both
each.
Look good.
Both of them let in a goal. So,
right.
where Shesterkin had far fewer shots on goal, he actually had less than half that Lundqvist had, but sometimes that can be... I mean, you just don't get the same type of... Who knows? Like, he had 7 shots on goal on him in 29 minutes. I mean, it's not much to look at there. I don't think you can look at that and say, well, yes, his save percentage is lower than Lundqvist. You're not going to do that because it was 1 goal each.
Exactly. Yeah, and
so I don't think we know who will start.
No, and number 7, speaking of don't know who's going to start, I got Robin Lehner. This guy for me is the obvious choice. If I'm, Vegas, this is who I'm picking to start. But again, Marc-Andre Fleury's got the resume there that Lehner.
Marc-Andre Fleury going to go to Seattle? That would be freaking awesome.
That would be, actually.
They just say, we're going to re-sign Robin Lehner, and then you guys can have Fleury. And then he goes to Seattle, and what does he do? We'll see. Okay.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay, let's go. We'll go 6-4-3. My 6 is a guy who is your number 10. Like I said, I had a much higher Carey Price. I think just based off talent level alone and just watching him, that he's a great elite goaltender who plays for a bad team. Jordan Binnington starts my top 5. Guy that could have won the Conn Smythe Trophy last year had it not been for the heart and soul of Ryan O'Reilly. I think, he was able to come into this year's regular season, and he looked pretty good. Like he didn't look like he lost a step from last year. Yeah, he didn't have heroic numbers like he did the previous year, but still a .912 save percentage, .256 goals against, and he was 30-13-7. So he played very well when he was in net for the Blues. And I don't think there's any Jake Allen controversy. I think Jake Allen had some real nice games down the stretch. He was like 927 save percentage, 215 goals against. But I don't think there's any chance that the Blues go away from Jordan Binnington. And then my number 4 is Ben Bishop for the Dallas Stars.
Okay, yeah, not too different of a list, to be quite honest, because at number 6, I've got your boy from Toronto, Freddie Anderson.
I appreciate you putting him so freaking high. It's great.
No.
I hope he plays like that.
I'm expecting.
He played well against Montreal, but like I said, Montreal blows, so.
Tell me how you really feel. This guy to
pretty
me
high
has
on
been,
Montreal if you.
Yeah. This guy to me over the last few seasons, he's been like the one guy that nobody really talks about, for the Vezina who should get some consideration because he's been, for the last 5 years, he's played for a team that lets in so many shots, and he's just been rock steady for so many years for this team. And I think right now he's looking at this as a prime opportunity to say, okay, we're going to go out, we're going to get this. We've got a hungry offense, some hungry forwards in front of us who really want to put up some goals. And, if I can just lock it down, we could go deep. And I think this is what I'm expecting Toronto to hopefully do. And, I think he'll be a rock solid goaltender for them. And so, not really worried about him and what he's going to produce these playoffs. Number 5, same as you, I've got Jordan Binnington. Again, no controversy here. He's going to be the starter. Although I will say if you're St. Louis, you feel safe that, as well as Jake Allen played. Yeah, if there's injury, you feel pretty confident with Jake Allen back there. And then at number 4, I've got Ben Bishop. Yeah,
Ben Bishop being in there, I mean, there's just there's not a whole lot to say. He's an absolute beast, and that a defensive style game suits him because he's able to just pick up positioning, and that it really just fits the way that he is built and the way that he plays. Yeah, which has made him essentially a potential Vezina candidate as long as Dallas continues to play this defensive style.
Right, and I think outside of Carey Price, he might be the second best positional goaltender in the league, in my opinion.
Yeah, I no doubt about that. One small debate we'd love to hear on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk. See, we're just going back to Frederik Andersen for a second. I call him Freddie. I'm like, yeah, great save, Freddie. And my dad and my brother, Luke, he's been on the show before, they both call him Andy. I'm like, guys, I don't know why. Is that weird to anyone else? Calling Frederik Andersen Andy? Yeah, Andy made the save. It's Freddie, not Andy. It's Freddie.
I guess, if you heard maybe some audio of the players or the coaches calling him Andy, then maybe that might click. But
no one's ever called him that before except for
I would just call him Freddie just based on his name alone.
Exactly. So. Okay, thank you for clearing that up. Let me know if you call him Andy, and if you do, just go ahead and give us a good unfollow. Just kidding. You can.
A good unfollow.
All right, let's knock out our top 3. We've got the same guys. Let's find out the order. I've got Tuukka Rask coming in at 3, the ultimate first 3-round goaltender. And then Andrei Vasilevsky sliding in at number 2. And at number 1, based off the incredible season he had and based off the fact that he is this team's best player, hands down, and that is not the case for very many other goaltenders, Connor Hellebuyck is my number 1 goaltender in the playoffs.
Wow. I am impressed, sir. I was not so generous for Hellebuyck. I put him at number 3. And
he's supposed to be your boy.
He is my boy, but I will say, at number 2, I've got Tuukka Rask. And number 1.
We're all harder on the people we love.
That's very true. And number 1, I've got a guy who, if I got to give him a nickname, it's Vassy, right? I'll call him Vassy, but argue with me on Twitter if you think that's weird too. But I mean, look, Tuukka Rask has got the pedigree. He's been there before. Granted, his 1 cup, he was a backup, but he's taken his team to the finals. Granted, he blows game 7s. We all know that. It's just not in his resume. But I think given the success he's had in the playoff over a guy like Connor Hellebuyck, who hasn't had much playoff success. Now, is that his fault? No, I don't blame him one bit. But he did have a fantastic regular season. He will probably. I think there's a strong chance he wins the Vezina, even though Connor Hellebuyck should win it. There's a strong chance that he'll win it because people will look and go, he only had 8 losses. Right.
Because your team was freaking unstoppable, especially in the beginning of the season, whereas Connor Hellebuyck had nobody in front of him.
He had to carry that team, yeah. And I don't disagree with you. He is the best player on his team. And, unfortunately, that just wasn't enough to propel him over the 2 guys in front of him. Vasilevsky, I mean, when you look at him, he's been solid since day 1. This guy's going to go in there and be solid again for the Lightning, who I believe, probably have the most potent, offensive team, maybe, next to Toronto, who I think could be the 2 highest scoring teams in the NHL these playoffs. So, I just can't argue with any one of these 3 being in any, 1, 2, or 3, whatever position you want to put them in. There's no argument against it in my mind.
Sure. Yeah. I'll say this. You've got Connor Hellebuyck. We just agreed he's the best player on his team. To me, the only other team in the playoffs with a goaltender who's the best player on their team is Montreal.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any other ones. So. All right. Any final thoughts before we tap out and begin watching the NHL freaking playoffs, because they are upon us?
My gosh, August 1st, what a day it's going to be. That New York and Carolina series opening us up at 12. I am just super pumped. And
you can go follow us on Instagram at OT Hockey Talk. You can follow us on Twitter as well. We are going to be watching that game together. We're going to go have some video content as we go through that game. So we'll have some fun online with that. So hop on with us and interact with us as we go, and as we all watch the wonderful music, the wonderful orchestra of the playoffs. With that said, Justin, I'll see you on the other side of the playoffs. Once the playoffs begin, I feel like it's a new life. We're in a new world. So we'll talk to you guys very soon. We'll see you on Instagram and Twitter, and enjoy the playoffs.